Hey everybody, it's Allie, and welcome to our Y&R Chat for Sunday, April 28th, 2019. This one is so hard. It's just so hard. I know it's hard for you too. Y&R fans worldwide have got to be emotionally raw right now. Y&R gave us a long, hard week of goodbyes to Neil Winters and to Kristoff St. This was our funeral for Neil. For the average viewer who doesn't have any contact with the actors on the show or anyone associated with the show, doesn't have the opportunity to go to fan events, this was our chance to say goodbye to someone who meant something to our lives. It's not just that he was a character on a show that we liked. He touched our lives, and it was incredibly gut-wrenching. I was crying all week. I know you were too. I was crying before Tuesday's episode aired. I was crying before Neil's death was even revealed. I was crying during the Price is Right hour. Y&R showed a preview of what the week was going to be like. I should have taken that as a signal, because by the time Friday rolled around, I had to take the day off of work. I'm not even kidding you. It was so much. I was crying on Tuesday when we found out that Neil had died. I was crying on Wednesday when everyone else in Genoa City learned the news. I was crying on Thursday all through the funeral, and I was crying on Friday looking at all of those flashbacks. And the real kicker of it all, of course, is that I end up watching each episode twice so that I can really soak it in and present it well for Y&R Chat. So I cried twice for each episode. Cried in the morning and cried in the evening. I'm a wreck. And I just know that you are too. I've heard from fans all through the week that it was just so hard to get through. I wonder if everyone feels that Y&R did an overall good job in handling this. I thought that might make an interesting poll question to start us out with. Do you think that Y&R gave us a good goodbye to Neil Winters? This was a tough one. I'd love to know what you think. YRChat.com is the website. I'm curious to see how many people actually really think that Y&R did the right thing by Neil and by Kristoff. I really would have to say yes. It had everything. The entire week. I mean, the big things, and right down to the little touches, right down to the flowers and the fruit baskets and the stack of mail that was sitting on the Ashby kitchen table that had stacks of sympathy cards just sitting there amongst the bills and the spam of everyday life. That felt real. It all felt real because it is, you know? It was a bizarre crossover of fiction and reality. Oh. I really don't know what else I could have asked for. I don't know what more they could have done. The only thing that really comes to mind, I suppose, would be the fact that Olivia wasn't present during any of it. Nate didn't mention her, so she was represented. I know that the actress was out of the country when they were filming all of this. It's really a shame that she couldn't have been involved. She was a significant part of Neil's history and of the show, but I understand. And I am so grateful that Y&R was able to incorporate so many other characters, past and present, and that they could be there to attend Neil's service. You know, I mean, to say goodbye to someone who, by all accounts, was a really good man who passed away way too young, way too soon. Neil should have been kicking around on Y&R for another 20 years. He had 20 more years I should have been seeing him. And it just doesn't seem real that he's actually gone. I can't believe it. All through the week, I just kept expecting Neil to walk around the corner and show his face. He's just someone who's always been there, and just like that, he's not. I was really afraid going into this week for how Y&R was going to handle Neil's death, because I didn't have any idea about what they were planning, and I was terrified that they were somehow going to screw it up. And I just feel so relieved that Neil passed away peacefully in his sleep, and that Y&R did not feel the need to make his death soapy and dramatic. And that's what I was expecting, and that's what I was afraid of. I was afraid they were going to make it big and traumatic, and the fact that it was just peaceful gives me a little bit of peace. Neil had just picked up Lily from prison, and he was on his way to Devon's restaurant opening. He goes to take a disco nap, they called it, before the party. I was fascinated by the concept of a disco nap, that he's just resting up, so that he could go out and party later. And one little picky thing, why did Neil take a nap at Devon's house? Why was he at Devon's penthouse when his penthouse was just a couple of steps away? Did Neil sell his penthouse to Nate? Did I miss that part? I'm trying to understand why he was at Devon's, but he was upstairs taking his nap to rest up for the party, and Devon was at the party. He was trying to get a hold of Neil, wondering why he wasn't there yet. And when Devon realizes that Neil's not answering the phone, not answering his text messages, something just feels wrong. Devon goes back to the penthouse, and he's calling out, "Dad, come on, hey, where are ya? It's not a party till Neil Winters is here." And he's walking up the steps, and we cut to commercial. Come back from commercial, and Devon is just walking down the steps, carrying his phone and carrying the weight of what he's just seen and what he's just been through and what's just happened, even though it was only implied that it happened and we just knew. Devon walks to the door and he opens it, waiting for the paramedics to come through, and that was such a simple thing. And just watching him open up that door, something that you do every single day, only now it's so much heavier. That door had to feel like it weighed 1,000,000 pounds. And as he's waiting for the paramedics to arrive, he just walks back to that piano where Neil's clothes are still in the dry cleaning bag. They're just lying on top of the piano for the party that Neil is intending to go to dance at, to laugh at, to be reunited with his family for the first time in a long time. Lily being there too. Like, this is the family that he built. He was looking forward to this evening. And Devon just leans into the piano, leans into his clothes, and weeps. Devon now has the burden of going back to the club to break the news to everyone. I mean, he's walking into this club where people are dancing and are happy and are living. They're full of life. And he's having to break the news first to Lily that Neil has passed away. And I can only imagine, because we didn't hear it, that the sounds of her sobbing overtook the club, that Kane probably could hear her sobbing. It drew his attention. He runs over to her. That drew the attention of the twins. The twins didn't get a whole lot of screen time, but I really felt for them too, because they were there for everything this week, and that's pretty traumatic to go through as a young actor. They're still young, and I bet that they really looked up to Kristoff St. John in the way that Crystal Khalil and Brighton James looked up to him 20 years ago. And I can't imagine how hard it would be to be present in those scenes and to go through this grief of losing someone who you looked up to, at such an early age. Well, the word starts to spread through the club, and Devon just tells everyone under the scene that Neil has passed away, and there's no words. It's just music playing in the background, so we as the audience are just watching their physical reactions to the news. That episode was so powerful because it's like nothing needed to be said. Everybody knew. We knew. And so the fact that they just chose to show that visually was so powerful, so impactful. I didn't know if we were going to really learn what happened to Neil, but the next day we found out from Nate that Neil most likely had a massive stroke that was possibly brought on by having high blood pressure, and he never probably even knew it. Neil just went to sleep and probably never felt any pain. And that's really the best death that anyone could possibly hope for, just going to sleep and not waking back up. But it doesn't take the pain away. I mean, knowing that he didn't suffer is a relief, but everyone around him is now suffering. The pain is still there. The guilt is still there. Lily is afraid that her going to prison is what put all of this extra stress onto Neil, and maybe she ended up putting him in a situation where he was having to take on more than he could handle. She called out saying, "I killed Hillary, I killed my dad, and I cannot take this anymore." I felt for her. I just felt for her. She ran off, and Kane follows her. They have a chance to sit down at the coffee house, and she actually talks about her last time seeing her father and how she at least feels, at least somewhat comforted that she was able to see him one time after getting out of prison, and that at least he was able to see her walking free. He was there. I mean, of course he was. Of course. He was there the day that Lily stepped foot outside of the prison. And to Kane, Lily was recounting this last encounter with her father, and she said the last thing that Neil said to her was, "I love you, baby girl. I love you, baby girl." Can't you hear him saying it? Oh, those were his last words to his daughter. Devon didn't get to hear those words. Devon found his father. Oh. What a burden. I mean, Devon had to be the one to find him. And he has his own sense of guilt now, too. He's afraid that he was pushing Neil to attend the club opening when maybe he wasn't feeling well, and maybe he caused Neil to ignore some signs that would have been there. And Devon had this line where he said, right now it seems like life is just a series of goodbyes. It was Drusilla, and then Catherine, and then Hillary and our child, and now Neil. And if you live long enough, it is a series of goodbyes. I mean, it's a series of a lot of other wonderful things too, but how can you not be thinking that in that moment? I'm sure that Devon would have loved to have heard Neil say, I love you, one last time, in the way that Lily got to hear that. But what Devon got a vision of Neil. He just turns around and he can see him clear as day. He's just standing there looking beautiful and gorgeous, pressed and polished in his suit. Clearly these were scenes that were taken with Kristoff St. posing for his final opening credit sequence. He's wearing the same suit. He looks exactly the same as he does in his opening credits, but I'm guessing they had filmed Kristoff on the green screen background, so they were able, editing wise, to easily edit him into that scene. And he just looks so good. He just looks so good. And Devon just looks at him and looks at this apparition and says, I miss you. I love you. Why did you have to leave? I need you. It was so sincere and so simple. And then as fast as Neil was just there, he was just gone, you know, and then that's representative. As fast as he was here, he was just gone. So what did you all think of that effect? Y&R did something similar for Catherine when she passed away. We saw like a hologram of her, and here they are doing it again. I thought it was nice because it was a new image of him, you know. I mean, we saw so many flashbacks and things this week, but here was something that maybe we hadn't seen before, and it just made me feel like he was there one more time, just one more time, even if it was just for a moment. The news of Neil's death started to spread through Genoa City like a fog, and it just hit each person individually in their own way. And as each person received the news of Neil's death, I felt like I was receiving it all over again. Every single new person who learned about it, I felt like I was learning about it for the first time. And it happened over and over a dozen times. I think it was Wednesday's episode. Abby and Tracy were at the club opening the previous night, and so Abby told Jack, who is one of Neil's closest friends, business partners, and I have to say, I was really glad that Y&R did not tie in Neil's death with the Abbott Winters Foundation or any type of addiction storyline. I think that would hit a little too close to home. It's kind of what I thought Y&R was going to do, and I'm so glad that they didn't. I think Kristoff St. John had reportedly been drinking heavily the night he died, and so I didn't want them to do something like, oh, he got in a drunk driving accident or something like that. I'm just so glad that it did not parallel real life in that way. But they did show Jack looking at his sobriety chip on the day of the funeral, and maybe it was just because that was something that connected them, but it felt significant. It had to be significant. Ashley was also there, and she got the news from Abby, and Ashley was Neil's last known love affair. She honestly kind of dogged him real hard. She broke up with him in a text message and then flew away out of town. So Ashley has got a lot of regret that she needs to be working with right now. And honestly, I don't hate her for it. I feel like I could connect with her, because who here hasn't intentionally or unintentionally hurt someone and never really took the time to make it right? There's probably someone out there right now that you dogged and you haven't really taken the time to make it right. And so I guess I could understand where she was coming from and the regret that she is feeling. And then Jack calls Victor. Interesting choice. Jack and Victor are mortal enemies, and yet the very first person that Jack decides to call to give him the news is Victor. Right as I started watching Y&R, Neil was working for Victor, I believe. It was right around the time he was working for Victor at Newman Enterprises when I started watching the show. So that relationship is significant to me, Victor and Neil's. Even into the recent past, Neil has this really wonderful way of being candid with Victor that nobody else in town has the gall for. So I felt for Victor receiving the news. And Nikki had a very intimate relationship with Neil. They were connected through the journey of sobriety, but they also had years of friendship and family. And if you think about it, who wasn't connected to Neil through either friendship or family? He didn't really have any enemies. I've never heard a single character on the show come out and say, I hate Neil Winters. I've never heard a Y&R fan say that they didn't like Neil Winters. Thursday's show was the hardest, hands down, I think. It was the funeral day. One by one, everyone who was closest to Neil stood up, gave their eulogies. When Devon signed I love you to that big portrait of Neil, that was it. I lost it. It was perfect. That was perfect. The big portrait. I love that big portrait. I was expecting to see a big portrait. I'm glad I got the big portrait. They got that right, no doubt about it. I would also like to note how perfect the floral arrangements were. They were white and indigo. I think purple was Neil's favorite color, for sure. So it was beautiful. I mean, in general, I think that the funeral felt like a real funeral. It had all of the beats that a church service really has. Anna had her beautiful hymn. I mean, she sang all the verses of Amazing Grace. We got all of them. It's like 6 verses to that song. We got them all, and it was beautiful. And she had a single tear rolling down her face as she finished the song. And one by one, the friends and family stood up and they shared their memories and they shared their grief. Oh. Malcolm's eulogy came first. And Malcolm let it all air out. Malcolm, he openly acknowledged that he had issues with his brother in front of everyone. He just said it. I mean, we do have to remember that when we last saw Malcolm, recast, it was a recast of Malcolm, Neil had slept with Malcolm's fiance, Sophia, and gotten her pregnant with that little boy, Moses, who was sitting in the pews out there mourning the death of his father. Although it really wasn't focused on, there wasn't much emphasis put on that. Maybe there's a time not too far down the road where Y&R should put some emphasis on Moses. Malcolm was Neil's brother. Malcolm knew him first. And Malcolm was the younger brother who could never quite measure up. They were oil and water. Two very different approaches to life, two very different men. Neil was stiff. Malcolm was loose. Neil liked stability. Malcolm liked unpredictability. Neil took care of his 3 children. Only one of them is actually his. Malcolm had sex with his brother's wife when she was completely out of it, sick. Conceived Lily. That's how Lily was conceived. And Malcolm stepped aside. Malcolm, I think, didn't want to interfere with Neil and Lily's relationship because it wasn't found out that Lily was his daughter for many, many years down the road. But I also get the sense that Malcolm really doesn't have that much of a relationship with Lily, his biological daughter. And Malcolm also had vowed to be a father figure to Nate, and it doesn't seem like those two have much of a relationship either. So Malcolm has his flaws, and Neil was always trying to talk him through and into being a better man, stepping it up. And perhaps that's why the betrayal with Sophia stung so much. Maybe that's why it cut so deep between them, because Neil was always telling Malcolm to be better, and then Neil faltered and he did something that really hurt Malcolm. Boy, did Shamar Moore chew those scenes. Especially in his eulogy. He was touching the portrait, he was pointing to the sky, he was choking up, and it was good. It was really good. Something tells me that Kristoff would have especially appreciated Shamar's scene because it broke the mold of what you would expect to see at a funeral. It was honest, it was sassy, it was relatable. You know, I mean, he spoke to the way they talked to one another. It was a cornball. They called me a cornball. You know what I mean? It was an element that was just very real. It wasn't the formal eulogy. He was talking about Neil in a way that they talked to each other. It was funny at times. And I really knew and felt that Malcolm was saying those words to Neil as much as Shamar was saying those words to Kristoff. And, you know, you can really say that about everyone. I think there was dual meaning in everyone's eulogy and what everyone was feeling all through the week. But I did read an interview where Shamar Moore said that one of the harder things about coming back and doing these scenes was remembering to call him Neil and not Kristoff. Yes, in many ways I think that the funeral episode was the hardest because I knew without a doubt that each and every one of those eulogies had a deeper layer just beneath it. It wasn't just the characters saying goodbye, it was the actors saying goodbye. I mean, Victor and Jack, for instance, were colleagues and friends of Neil's, just as Eric Braeden, Peter Bergman. They were colleagues and friends of Kristoff's. I have absolutely no doubt that Kristoff was loved by his castmates. I have absolutely no doubt that he treated them all like family. Devon, Lily, Kane, and the grandkids especially. I bet you he treated them as if they were his family. I really think that Devon's eulogy was beautiful, especially beautiful in the way that it contrasted with Malcolm's. Malcolm was bigger, more bold, and Devon was just subtle. And it's the same way that his performances were all week. It was just so, Devon was so respectful and so admiring of his father, and yet he also acknowledged the path that they had to tread to get to where they are. It made me smile a little bit to think about Devon's origin story, because he doesn't talk about it very much. It's not mentioned very much in the show that Drusilla found Devon. I believe he was living in a halfway house, and she connected with him. She wanted to adopt him. She wanted to bring him into the family home, and Neil wouldn't have it. It almost destroyed Drew and Neil's relationship. Neil was so opposed to it. And I mean, he just did not want this kid in his home. He thought he was a bad seed. Didn't want this kid mixing and mingling with his precious daughter Lily. But over time, Neil just chose to love him. He just chose to accept him, and the rest is history, really. I mean, I think that over time, Devon and Neil felt like a real father and son, and I'm sure that that's because Brighton and Kristoff had such a close relationship in real life. Lily breaking down throughout the week was so relatable to me, to have to go through the grief of losing someone and then to have to stand there and talk about it in front of other people and try to put on a brave face. I could see how that would be way too much of a burden to carry way too soon. Malcolm and Lily actually asked Kane to stand up and say a few words about Neil, because Lily just couldn't do it. She tried on 2 separate occasions and just, I cannot do this. And Kane was Neil's son-in-law, and even though Neil took issue with him and had a right to, Neil still accepted him, and he still accepted that this was the father to his grandchildren. And Kane talked about how Neil taught him how to be a parent, because Kane didn't have the good example. And so Kane watched how Neil parented Lily, and that's how he learned how to do it. Kane also, at the end of his eulogy, started to address Lily, and he wanted to remind her that she had the strength within her to stand up and say a few words about her father, because her father's the one who put the strength there. Neil taught her how to live, how to be. That's how she should know that she could do it. And honestly, there was part of me that just was thinking, leave her alone. Just let her be. Just let her get through the day, without somebody telling her she needs to do or should be doing, or, you know what I mean? I felt for her having to deal with that unnecessary pressure. I have not lost either of my parents, and I could see myself just getting through. I could see I can imagine that I'm going to somehow be able to muster some strength to say words to anybody, when it's probably going to take everything that I have in me just to get through the day. But she did, she stood up and she said what she was feeling, what she was really, really feeling. She was not just given lip service or words or trying to make anybody else feel better. She was just saying what she felt. Grief. When she lost her mom, she had her dad, and now she doesn't even have that. Oh, Lily. Something deeper is going on there. I think Lily, the character, and Crystal Khalil, the actress, seem to be going through something. I just feel it. I feel I'm looking at a human who's trying to push past something. Maybe even, something that has nothing to do with Neil and Kristoff. I'm looking at her and I feel like she's at a turning point. And in terms of the Lily character, I got the feeling the entire time that Lily was practically crawling out of her skin, just wanting to get out of there and wanting to get out of town. I was so relieved when Friday's episode opened up with Malcolm's declaration that there would be no more tears. We just need to have music and memories and friends and family and flashbacks. That is what I was needing to see on Friday. Kristoff's young baby face. Everybody's young baby face, really. It was like flipping back through a video photo album. What a treasure. And so it was perfectly appropriate that the reception on Friday ended with the Winters family taking a family photo, something to add to that album. And the photo was also reminding us that Malcolm is a photographer. That's what he does for a living. He used to be our hot young Jabot photographer, I believe. Wasn't that his first job? I seem to remember him kicking around in the basement of Jabot with Blade and Ashley. I could be off, but that's for some reason where my brain went. I love those flashbacks of young Malcolm Winters. I mean, that man, Shamar Moore, was the hottest thing to hit those screens in the 90s. He had a way about him. And he came on right at around the time also that I started watching the show. I started in 93, and I believe Malcolm was cast in 94. I want to say, and I mean he was a star. He was so obviously a star, and he went on to become one of the biggest stars of CBS. So it was nice to see his origin and those early scenes of him and his brother and how they went from being contentious to trying to embrace each other. They have had a rocky road. Oh, but my favorite flashbacks were from my personal favorite era of Neil. Indigo. Neil opens a jazz club. I think the jazz club days of Neil Winters were the best. He was happy then. He was engaged then. Like, there was just something where I felt like he was coming into his own. It was taking Neil beyond the corporate world and showing us his love of music, and there was something about that made me feel more connected to him. And of course I loved him in the business flashbacks too. The business flashbacks of Neil at Newman and at Jabot were great, but I think what I loved even more was Victor and Jack arguing at the reception about who discovered Neil in the first place. I mean, these two, even at a funeral reception, they're standing there arguing about who liked him better. Oh, and of course, there were all of the wonderful flashbacks of Neil and his children. And it seemed like a thoughtful choice, an intentional choice, for Lily's flashback sequence, to choose a flashback from when Lily was in jail a long time ago. I want to say it was after she had run away with Daniel. And she was afraid of going to jail, and in the scene, she was crying and begging for her father's help, and he was embracing her. Oh, that was good. Lily was really having a hard time holding it together, though, the entire time. more than anyone, I think I was having trouble divorcing what might be going on with Lily and what Crystal Khalil might be going through. There was just something in her delivery that felt like I'm looking at someone who's actually going through this. This isn't acting. She's actually going through this. She was barely holding it together. She was doubled over the entire time, holding her stomach. Kane was trying to be right there to help her and to support her, but things are not right between them. Things are not the same between them, and things are not the same at all anymore now that Neil's gone. Earlier in the week, Lily did let Kane accompany her to the restaurant opening. And from the outside, they were looking like a happy couple. But we know that they're anything but. I really thought it was going to be predictive, though, that Tracy was chatting with Kane and she made some comment to him about how his story is not over. And then when Devon was asking Lily for a status report on what was going on with her and Kane, Lily implied that she might be wavering a little bit. So I thought, oh, are these two going to get back together? Is Crystal Khalil deciding to come back to the show full time? I really did. Lily and Kane shared that dance, and he pulled her in really close and said really low in her ear that he would do anything for her, that all he wanted is her, that, you know, in many ways his love is undying for her. And it seemed like she heard it that time. I mean, the way she kind of pulled away from him, looked at him, I thought, she's gonna take him back. But after the reception was over, she told him no. She told him that she is still leaving. Her father wanted her to find happiness, and she has realized that that happiness is not with Kane. So she's moving on, and I do hope that she finds something that makes her happy, and I hope that for Devon, too. Monday, before the news of Neil's death was brought to the club, Lily was there. Oh, and she was watching Devon and Elena dancing. And she was looking at him even the whole time throughout the restaurant opening. And I thought, could she be thinking right now, looking at Devon and Elena on the cusp of something, could she be thinking about how much she wished she just would have let Hillary and Devon be together? That if she wouldn't have interfered in their relationship, that their lives would be different right now. Hillary would be alive. Her entire life would be different right now. That must be what she was thinking. And might she also just be feeling relieved that somehow Devon is turning a corner, that somehow he is finding it in his heart to love again, and it wasn't an easy road to get there. He is finally finding it in his heart to love again after such an incredible loss that she was a part of. The final scene for Friday, Devon had been holding it together all day, and he finally just lets his guard down. Elena walks into the apartment and he's alone there, and for the first time he just allows himself to cry with her. He just lets it all out. See, Devon, he's still carrying the weight of Hillary's death, and now he's being forced to carry the weight of Neil's death. And it's a lot to carry. He needs to be the one to carry this family forward. Devon is the future of the Winters family. He is carrying on Neil's legacy. And it's a lot of weight. But I think he can do it. I feel confident in Devon. I think he's going to have Elena. I think Y&R is grooming Elena to become Devon's Drusilla. I wouldn't be surprised if someday soon we're going to have a long-lost brother show up at Devon's door and challenge him the way that Malcolm challenged Neil. This is the circle of life and of soaps. I mentioned a couple of weeks ago how I don't like to watch interviews with anyone from the Y&R cast. It has had an effect of ruining people for me, but I broke my own rule and I decided to sit down and watch The Talk on CBS. They aired a 3-segment tribute to Kristoff St. John and had as guests Shemar Moore, Victoria Rowell, Brighton James, and Crystal Khalil. So Malcolm, Drew, Devon, and Lily. It was really nice. I also have to say, one of the hostesses seemed to know the show and seemed to have a knowledge of the history of the show and who Neil was, his relationship to the other characters. So it felt personal. And I really enjoyed this. The thing that struck me the most in listening to the 4 cast members speak was how each of them felt in one way or another that Kristoff St. John contributed significantly not only to their personal lives but to their careers overall. Like, they would not be where they are today without him. In fact, Shemar Moore told the story of his audition for the show and how welcoming and reassuring that Kristoff was toward him in the audition, and how Bill Bell actually asked Kristoff who he wanted to play his brother, and Kristoff picked him. He picked Shemar Moore. What a story. It was really clear that Shemar felt that Kristoff got him the Y&R job that launched his entire career. He even said, I would have had a life without Kristoff, but I would not have had this life without Kristoff. Oh, I thought that was just enlightening. It is really, really clear to me from watching this interview and everything I've ever heard that Kristoff was not only a great actor, but he was a great man. I mean, Crystal Khalil, Lily, actually choked up during the interview and said that Kristoff is like a father to her. Truly, truly. That she does not have a relationship with her own father, and she saw Kristoff in that way. So I think maybe that's what I was picking up on in her performances throughout the week. This person actually lost her father. You know, I mean, she said Kristoff was there on my wedding day. He was at her wedding. And Brighton said the same thing, that Kristoff was like a father to him, like a father and a big brother all rolled up into one. And if you think about it, Brighton and Crystal were child actors. They grew up on the show. They grew up looking up to him. How hard must this be? One thing that Brighton mentioned in the interview on The Talk that I did not know about was the fact that Victoria Rowell wanted to do an adoption storyline. So she was the one who initiated the storyline that brought Brighton onto the show. I didn't know that. And I have to tell you, of all the people I was nervous to see, it was Victoria Rowell. It was Drusilla. I did not know what to expect because Victoria Rowell has had a very contentious relationship with Y&R over these past few years. I think she filed a lawsuit against the show, and it's clear that they don't want to have much to do with her. I think they flat out have refused to bring her character back despite the fan demand to do so. Fans like Drusilla. Fans want Drusilla, but it kind of seems like Y&R behind the scenes doesn't want her. And so I was afraid that Victoria Rowell was going to seem bitter and that it was going to cloud my good memories of Drusilla, who was a character that I liked very much. But let me tell you, Victoria Rowell could not have been more lovely. She was lovely. She obviously takes her role as a Y&R ambassador very, very seriously. The first words out of her mouth, before she could even answer, before she even chose to answer the question that was asked of her, she told everyone to please remember right now, to take a moment to please remember right now, that the Y&R fan family is in mourning right now. The Y&R fan family, that's us, that's you and I. And she started out, before she answered a single question, by saying, I want y'all to keep in mind that these are people who are mourning someone right now. I was so impressed. Like, she got it. She got it. That we're a part of this family too. And that we're hurting. And I just really appreciated that. You know, I mean, I really appreciated being included on something that I'm not even close to. Yeah, she was great. She's I think also takes her role as an advocate very seriously. I think she had to pull herself back a little to make sure that the focus was staying on Kristoff and his life's work, when she probably wanted to talk about a million other things. She preceded him on the show. She was there first. And she mentioned how grateful she was to have had him, that she was in awe of him. He had a whole primetime career before he ever came on to Y&R. He was on Happy Days. Kristoff St. John was in Roots, for crying out loud. And it's so easy for, you know, me to kind of forget that because he just became Neil Winters. But this man had a whole career before he ever stepped onto our screens. He was a leading man. I think he was a leading man on the show. He was a leading man in life. Victoria Rowell talked also about how he protected her. And she felt like he really looked out for her within the industry. And everyone had that sentiment. I mean, pretty much everyone said that Kristoff went out of his way to help people. And that's something that goes way above and beyond what is expected from someone in their job. The Talk also had access to some really wonderful clips that I haven't seen in ages. We had Neil and Malcolm's very first scene together. It was a little funny that Shamar Moore looked back at the scenes and they asked him what he thought, and he said, oh, I had bad teeth. He was self-conscious about his teeth, which I thought are so cute. He's so cute. And I noticed that he seemed to have some new chompers when he came back this last time. I just thought, oh, I can't believe somebody as sexy as him would be self-conscious about anything, you know. But it was really great to see those young faces. Oh, and they showed Neil and Drusilla's honeymoon in Antigua. They're running around the beach. Her hair is like curly and just free, and like the wind's whipping in it, and they're just running around on the beach looking all young and hot. And we don't really see that many flashbacks with Drusilla. Y&R, I don't know, maybe they have to pay her if they use her image and they don't want to do that, but we never see Neil and Drew flashbacks. Maybe we will on Monday, but I really liked seeing them on the beach. And then my favorite one though, oh my gosh, I don't even remember this, but apparently there was a storyline where Devon got trapped in a lion's cage at the zoo. There was a real lion. Oh my goodness, those were the days. Those are back in the days where the networks put money into the soaps. I mean, we do not get on location honeymoon shoots anymore. We do not get no lions in no cages anymore. We barely get weddings anymore. So it was really fascinating just to see that. Although at the same time, I am kind of glad that Y&R is not quite as fantastical as it used to be. If somebody got caught in a lion's cage today, I would probably do a double eye roll. I don't know that I would appreciate that, but it's really fun looking back on it. The whole interview was just excellent. If you haven't seen it, it is still at cbs.com because I watched that twice too. I do everything twice. So I watched the talk live, and then I went back and watched it online so that I could grab a million screenshots. I have taken so many screenshots this week of everything. Every single flashback scene, I had to get a screenshot of it. They did some beautiful photo collages on the talk that I got some screenshots of. So if you can't find or decide not to watch the video of the talk interview, you can just go to yrchat.com and see the photo captions. But those 4 actors are going to be coming back on Monday for our one last tribute to Kristoff. This one's going to be all about Kristoff and his life. We've now moved past Neil's story, funeral, and now we're just going to have a whole episode on Monday that's dedicated to Kristoff. And then I guess, as they say, the show must go on. Victor and Nikki's story had to have been filmed outside of the current story timeline, because in the present story, Victor is off on his magical mystery tour and Nikki is trying to hunt him down. But this week, Victor returns to Genoa City, pays a visit to Victoria. She grills him about where he's been. He says he's fine. He's been on a business trip trying to catch some big fish, but he gave absolutely no indication of anything that he's been up to. And just before learning of Neil's death, Nikki finds him, confronts him in his office, demands answers about the psychiatrist's bill and where he's been, and he was about to tell her when they got the call about Neil. And everything was put on hold as they attended the funeral services. But as soon as those services were over, Victor was back in his office, packing his briefcase and telling his baby that he's got to go. And it's not in her best interest to tell her where. Genoa City Society decided to show up after all. Last week I asked you guys if you felt that the new restaurant was 5 stars or a flop. The majority vote, 55%, gave it 5 stars. I'm a little surprised that 45% of you did not like the new restaurant. I mean, there's definitely some things about it that could be better, I'm sure. But overall, I really liked it. I really liked the red carpet premiere. I thought it was cool the way they had a photographer there taking pictures of the guests like it was an event. That was something a little bit different. I also really liked the way that the club, or that the restaurant part, turned into a club with a DJ, Society After Dark. That's kind of a neat way to flip-flop the set. It's a restaurant and it's a club. I wonder if it is going to replace the rooftop bar. Because remember last summer we had lots of dance parties there with that glowy effect, and it just gave us a night feeling. I wonder if now Society is going to be giving us that, especially because we have that stage. It's not just the restaurant and the DJ booth, but there's a whole stage, so you know there's going to be a whole bunch of musical numbers. You can pretty much bet that Tessa's going to be playing there soon. I mean, we had Jet and Anna opening up the club doing their song, so we're going to get a lot of musical acts, I think. Maybe it's a way that we're kind of paying homage to Neil's Indigo. I'm going to pretend it's that. But I don't know, I liked it. I like the gold danglies, like the gold dangly circles that were hanging behind the stage and giving a backdrop to whoever's on the stage. And I loved the colorful LED screen that was behind the performer. That looked a whole lot better before it was hijacked. Ashley and Jack are incredibly immature. I'm starting to think that neither of them were really able to evolve past their childhoods, because they both just still act like children. Ashley sneaking in the Jack of Hearts coasters onto every table to promote her business, and Jack probably bribing a waiter to put his Jabot Collective ad on that LED screen. And it's not just that it was childish. It really bothered me that Ashley stole Ted, the receptionist. It wasn't just a childish ad war. Ashley also was poaching a Jabot employee. I mean, I guess the good news is we get to imagine Ted going to Paris and having fun. But, the bad news is we're losing Ted. That was our goodbye to Ted. I mean, I think Ted probably got more of a goodbye than some Y&R characters have gotten. But yeah, he ain't gonna be replaced. The other thing is, too, that it's so insensitive to Abby that they were doing this whole thing at her club opening. I mean, her mother and her uncle showed absolutely no respect whatsoever. They just stepped right over her to continue playing their childish games of one-upping each other. I don't think anything's going to bring these two together. Neil's death did on the surface bring them together for a few moments. I mean, they reminisced about him, they speculated about his relationship with Malcolm, and they related it to their sibling relationship. But I don't buy it. Neil's services ended on an up note for them, as if they had reconciled. But if Victor and Nikki's story had to be filmed out of timeline, I just have a feeling that Ashley and Jack's did too. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Ashley and Jack are back at each other's throats by next week. Mia snuck into the club before Abby could have a chance to have her thrown out. Abby was literally getting ready to run over to Mia and toss her out on her ear when Arturo blurted out that she can't do that because Mia is pregnant. And Abby realizes that means Arturo is potentially the father. These two were going to get back together. They really looked like they were going to get back together, if not for that. Abby was giving all kinds of signals that she was willing to forgive Arturo. She was telling him how grateful she was for his help. She even cut him a check, which I'm presuming was for the damage that she did to his truck. But I mean, ultimately, Mia's the sticking point. Mia's what ruined their relationship, and it's Arturo's fault at the end of the day. He did this to himself. The truck is irreplaceable, but Abby is not, and the relationship is over. Oh, you know what? I think we're not going to be seeing that much more of Arturo, but I think Mia's still got quite a bit more story left. Mia was cozying up to Jack at the restaurant opening. She's a makeup artist. He is the CEO of a major cosmetics company. If the actress wasn't leaving the show, this would have been a fabulous future storyline. Like, I could see her getting her claws into Jack, marrying him, like clomping down the halls of Jabot, wearing her new fur coat and her heels and trying on life as a rich person. And who knows, maybe she could give Jack a heart attack in bed and have him out of commission for a couple of weeks while she takes over the company and wreaks havoc on it and really pisses Kyle and Ashley off in the future. I don't know, I could just see that. I could just see it and enjoy it. But it's only going to happen in my mind. That's all I get. Because right now, Mia's on her exit path. She was a little bit funny, I think. Ray put her on lockdown. She was trying to make him jealous by talking to Jack. She thought that if she could be seen talking to Jack and pretending to take a drink of alcohol with a champagne toast, then she could get Ray to be concerned about her. And he fell right into the trap almost. She found a way to lure him back into her hotel room, tries to seduce him, and Ray just looks at her and says, no, we're not doing that. And also, you better get it together or I'm going to make sure that that baby of yours is born in prison. Lola receives the knife as a gift. And she makes this really weird comment, by the way, about it being bad luck that Summer and Kyle have given her a knife as a gift. Knives are supposed to represent severing of the relationship, and so she had to borrow a coin from Summer to counteract the bad luck, so it's not technically a gift. Basically, all Lola did was make that whole entire interaction more awkward. I thought to myself, man, Lola, you should have just said thanks and moved on. Well, all night Kyle is giving these longing looks over to Lola until he decides to go over and give a longing kisses to Lola. And then Nick decides to go on over there and give punches to Kyle, or he wanted to. He wanted to give the punches, but he really couldn't go through with it. I mean, yeah. If you see your son-in-law kissing another woman in the corner while your daughter is oblivious, you're definitely going to want to punch him. I was with Nick in that moment. But as Nick is starting to question Kyle about it, Summer interrupts them. She just busts up in the middle of it without knowing what has happened, without Nick even telling Summer that he just saw Kyle kissing Lola. And Summer just immediately starts defending her husband. She asks no questions, just defends Kyle. Tells Nick to butt out. She knows what she's doing. Just get out of her life. I don't need you or Mom making decisions for me. It wasn't until they got home that she finally asked Kyle, what was that confrontation with my father about? You know, what was he so mad about at you? And Kyle just comes out with it. Says that Nick caught him kissing Lola. And Summer was shocked. How? She was hurt and shocked and betrayed. And she was accusing Kyle of misleading her when I don't think that's entirely true. As mad as I am at Kyle, Summer cannot lie this entirely at his feet. Summer willfully ignored all of the signs. She willfully ignored the fact that they had this expressed understanding that the marriage was quid pro quo. You knew it going in. I mean, she told him that, a couple weeks ago, that it was okay that he loved Lola. She understood it was going to take some time. It's okay that he almost had sex with her. It's good for their relationship. She deluded herself, and he just didn't correct her. Until now. Kyle tells Summer that he loves Lola, and then Summer fills in the blanks that she put there. She takes off the blinders and allows herself to see that the marriage is a complete and total sham. Everything. The marriage, their vows, The fact that when he was saying those words to her at their ceremony, at the altar, he was saying them to her about Lola. I mean, it's gotta hurt, but she set herself up for it. Well, the hurt very quickly became anger. And when Kyle suggested they just need to end this marriage, it's not working, but he wishes that they could part as friends. They started as friends. He'd like to end it that way. And Summer has a turn. This is where we see the turn in Summer's personality. She says, you want to divorce me? And you've thought about the consequences of that? She said that word. You've thought about the consequences? Because so we know she's planning consequences. And he just says yes. And he leaves. And a glass shatters as she throws it at the door behind him. Ooh, you better watch your glass, Kyle, because it looks like Bad Girl Summer's coming back. Sipping tea, staring into space. This was our quote from last week's Y&Rs, and it does not describe how my week ended up going at all. There was no sipping tea, there was no staring into space, there were just tears and Kleenexes. But I have to give congratulations to those of you who guessed that it was Tracy saying that she was sipping tea, staring into space. This was all just part of her writing process. She was describing that to Jack. So congratulations, Sandra, Anna, Lynn, Keisha, Jamie, Henry, Melissa, Janice, Tanya, Colleen, Jamie D, and Diana. I have a new quote for you this week. Now, there were two people who said sort of a similar thing, but I like this phrasing of it. This just works. So you tell me who said it. Genoa City without Neil Winters. It's just wrong. Right? Genoa City without Neil Winters. It's just wrong. Ain't that right? Who do you think said it in that exact phrasing? YRChat.com is the website. If you think you know, go there, put your guess in the little guess box, and if you get it right, then I will give you your shout out during next week's Y&R Chat. I think it was especially hard looking through comments this week because everyone's feeling the same pain. And some of us are also going through real life loss at the same time. It's hard when you've lost someone recently in your own life and you turn to Y&R maybe looking for a little bit of escapism and you can't get it. So I understand why anyone would maybe not want to watch this week's shows if it was going to be too hard on them and just hit too close to home for them. It's like soaps are sometimes a beautiful escape, and then there are other times where it just hits way too close to home and it just feels way too real. And I also think that it's right to mourn this particular way. You know, I mean, Neil is someone who's been in our homes for over 25 years. I think it's okay and it's right to mourn. And I just want you guys all to know that my heart goes out to everyone and all the pain that we were all collectively feeling this week, but especially to those who've lost someone recently. And I'm not gonna isolate anyone specifically about that because I saw that comment multiple times. People saying, I just lost my dad, my brother, you know, I can't, you know, I can't, you know, it's just too much. So I just want you guys to know that my heart goes out to you, and I'm just gonna read, I mean, so many comments this week, so many, and I'm just gonna read some thoughts on Kristoff. We'll just focus on what everyone had to say about the memorial, starting with Margaret. Margaret says, wow, the Y&R writers are really giving the fans a great surprise. We've been wondering what the writers were going to do to give us to give this wonderful actor justice for all of the awesome years that Mr. Kristoff St. John has been on The Young and the Restless. So far, every day is waiting with anticipation on what's going to be shown next. I felt that way too, Margaret. I mean, I was ready on Tuesday. I'm as ready as anyone could be. I'm watching the show and I'm knowing that it's coming and I'm trying to prepare myself and I'm just waiting. And then when we didn't really get a cause of death, on Tuesday, I was like, oh, what happened? I mean, I'm tuning in for Wednesday. I'm tuning in for Thursday. I'm tuning in for Friday. I'm sure that a lot of fans, maybe even who don't watch the show regularly, were tuning in this week just to see how it was handled and what was coming next. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think they did a good job, and especially in the anticipation department, as you say, I was in, hard as it was. Marianne V says, this has been a beautiful tribute so far to Neil's character. How raw and real the emotions. Everyone who's worked with him was so visibly distraught. It must have been very difficult to do. It's unbelievably sad, but well done for, fitting for someone who's been on the show for so many years. Yes. Shelley says, I've not been affected by the death of someone I didn't even know more than I am with this. And Daisy S says, I've been watching this show for my entire life, and I don't think I've ever cried as much as I did this week. Y&R has done an excellent job with their tribute to Kristoff St. John. It really made me feel justified in my grief as a fan, and included in the celebration of his life. Kristoff St. John and Neil will be truly missed. Yes, that's what I feel too. I feel included. And I'm going to feel extra included, I think, on Monday when we're actually pulling out of the story of Neil and looking at the life of Kristoff. But I like that you said, you feel kind of justified in the grief, and we should. This is our lives too. Yes, and I think Y&R did do a good job of helping us to get through that. Leslie says, I am so very sad as I watch these scenes. Kristoff St. John was so special in real life, and by all that he showed to the public, and by his co-stars' comments. I don't really ever recall ever hearing a criticism of him by anybody ever. I don't either. I've never heard one single person say they didn't like him. He just seems by all accounts to just be such a wonderful, bright, shining star of a human being. I wish I would have met him. I feel like I could have met him and never feel disappointed. He seemed like he really embraced the role of being a Y&R ambassador also. I think he probably really loved the fans. And he just seems like someone who was welcoming and open to the fans, and that he accepted us as much as we accepted him. Daisy says, I wish they would have written Neil going away for a lucrative business deal, and then after a year or so introduce a new actor as Neil Winters. For me, the character Kristoff formed, along with his Y&R legacy, would have continued on that way, and now it just ends. Kristoff St. John really died tragically, a young man gone far too soon. It's not a story. And I feel like his colleagues having to go through the process of mourning a character for a TV show when they lost someone in real life. I don't know why they would choose to deal with Kristoff's loss this way, but maybe it was their way to honor him and his work. Gary says, I read that absolutely everyone associated with Y&R felt that given Kristoff's personality, he would most definitely have wanted Neil to die. Thus, they feel at peace with the choice that they made and the story being told. Where did you read that, Gary? Will you forward me that article? That is so interesting. Because I had that thought, Daisy, that I almost wish we didn't have to kill the character. I almost wish we didn't have to go through this, that the actors didn't have to go through this. but I never would have thought of a recast. That never would have occurred to me in a million years. There is a part of me, though, that would have liked to still believe that Neil was out there. That, you know, maybe he, in a Sally Spectra way, he's off sipping a cocktail somewhere, maybe on a beach. Like, you know, I feel like maybe that would have been easier on me. But at the same time, would we have felt cheated, do you think? I don't know. Would we have felt cheated if Y&R just quietly sent Neil away? I think that's a good question. But I think, as Gary mentions, what the actor would have wanted for the character plays a role too. I think I probably would want them to kill my character. But I'm curious to know exactly what the co-stars said about how Kristoff would have felt about Neil's death. Tammy says Kristoff St. John was one of the reasons The Young and the Restless is such a good show. They were right not to replace him. Nobody could feel Neil's shoes except for Kristoff. Oh, this is a really poignant comment by Katie saying, Devon walked up those steps looking for Neil, but Brighton walked down them crying about Kristoff. It hurts so much more to watch when you know that they're not acting. Yeah, that's why it hurt so much. You know, I mean, it would have hurt anyway. We experience deaths of characters. I mean, somebody dies every year. But knowing that the actors lost someone and that they're putting this on and as a way to help us get through it, it had to have taken a whole lot of guts. It could not have been easy for Brighton and Crystal to show up and to perform those scenes. But I agree 100% that what they were feeling was unmistakable. They used the grief and parlayed it into something that was palatable for the audience. I think it reached a lot of people. Zuperplex says, I believe that Crystal Khalil's performance was the most heart-rendering of them all. You really felt that when she said she'd lost her mother as well as a father, that it was true. I agree. Of everyone, I think, I definitely felt that it was personal for her. I mean, it was personal for everyone, of course, but just something about Crystal, it just felt that she was going through it. And she did cry on the talk interview and couldn't continue to speak. She started talking about Kristoff in a very nice way, a fairly light way, and she just, all of a sudden, the tears came, and she said, I thought I was done crying, and they just shifted focus. Brighton took over and started talking, so she's still hurting, and that's, I think, why we were feeling it a little extra. And I mean, these scenes had to have been filmed weeks ago, so this is all still very fresh for them. I mean, I understand what Daisy was saying too a couple comments ago, because that's a lot to ask of them. This was still fresh, and they're having to go through it again, and then they're going to go through it again when the fans have their reaction. And I think that also speaks to what Victoria Rowell was trying to get across in that talk interview by saying, let's remember, you know, that Kristoff passed away a month ago, we filmed these scenes weeks ago, but the fans are experiencing it today, so let's be mindful of that. Oh, Joanne says, what an emotional episode. All of the eulogies were so beautiful and obviously heartfelt. Did anyone notice that while Jack was speaking, the camera rested for a moment on Charlie wiping his eyes? Anna was in the pew behind him, and she gave an enormous yawn. I did not see that, Joanne, and it's a good thing I did not see that. If that's true, and she was yawning, I don't want to see it. I don't want to go back, because it will color how I feel about Anna for the rest of the time that she's on the show. If she was sitting back there during all of this, yawning, I'm pissed. Please don't tell me. Don't tell me if it's true. Do not screen cap it for me. I do not need to know because I will be furious. Ugh. Hey, Laura mentioned that Lily called Anna and not Anna. I noticed that too. Laura, I'm glad you mentioned it because I so wanted to, but I'm like, oh, I shouldn't focus on something like that in this week of so many other big things, but you're giving me permission. Lily, when she saw Anna at the club, called her Anna, and then Jack also called her Anna in an earlier scene, I think when he was talking to Ashley about feeling connected to the Winters family, and he called her Anna. So I wonder if the actors are just getting their scripts and seeing it written as Anna, but are not understanding that it was pronounced as Anna. I've made that mistake though too, but I would think for the scenes, I mean, Lily should know better. She's had scenes with Anna, right? I don't know. I mean, I could see Jack not getting it right, but Lily? Jana says, or is it Jana? I'm gonna go with Jana. Jana says, I wasn't expecting to see Neil on the screen, which made Devon's vision so surprising and powerful. Though I'll have to admit, realizing that it was footage shot for the opening credits took me out of the scene a little, but only a tad. No, it was me too. Me too. The first moment I saw the apparition, it was just immediate for me that I recognized it from Kristoff's opening credits, and I wished that I didn't realize it. I was thinking, oh, this is so cool. I wish that I wasn't thinking about the opening credits right now because it almost divorced me from the magic of what was happening. I didn't want to think about the behind the scenes reality that he was posing, you know. I mean, Kristoff's so sexy. You can see he's looking down and then he slowly looks up. And the way he just turns his head. I mean, this is pose, face, pose. I mean, oh, he looks so good. I screen capped my favorite shot of him because he just slowly looks up and turns to the side. I mean, it's funny because it's also part of the job. I mean, how many opening credits did he probably pose for in his life? You've got to become a professional. I mean, you're kind of a model in that moment, right? That's your moment. That's your star. And he was just pose. Various different poses. And Devon just looking at him and talking to him and asking questions. It was still cool, though. I still really liked the effect. Yeah. Diana says, I wonder if Shamar Moore was asked by the show what he wanted his character to say at Neil's funeral. Not only the words that Malcolm spoke, but also the actions he did while he was speaking about Neil. It seemed like the actor may have had some input of his own to add to the scene. It was very heartfelt and emotional, as all of the actors' comments were. Well, I actually did a little Nancy Drewing, and I think I can answer this question because I thought the same thing. I thought, is Shamar Moore ad-libbing some of this because it seemed so personal and seemed private? You know, it seemed so relaxed and personal. Well, when Shamar Moore was on The Talk, he showed a picture that he had framed of he and Kristoff, and it was also the way the photo was matted within the frame. It was a photo of him, but it was also the 2 pages of Malcolm's eulogy, the actual script of the eulogy. And I Nancy Drewed it. I zeroed in, I screen capped that, zoom, to see what exactly the script said versus what Shamar said. And also because Shamar had gone on and on about how well it was written. He said, when I got the script, I thought, did you guys know me? Were you in my closet? Did you know that this is what I was thinking? Because it was so what I would have said, what I would have picked for Kristoff. And so I zoomed in on the eulogy, and the basic framework of the speech was there, but he ad-libbed. The cornball thing, like that was not in there. He definitely did some ad-libbing. I mean, I think that probably you get a script and as an actor you're expected to perform it. But I think given the circumstances, Y&R was probably like, go ahead, you know, do a little bit of chewing, add a little bit of personal flair to it. It will help you. It will help the audience. It's, you know, it's a little something he added, just a little bit of his personality to it. Yeah. Ooh, Diana says, I wonder why Victor didn't mention that Moses would live on through Neil, or would live on through him. Victor mentioned Moses in his speech, in his eulogy speech, but then said that Neil would live on through Lily, Devon, Charlie, and Maddie, and he left little Moses out. I noticed that too, Diana. I wasn't gonna say it because I felt bad, nitpicking or whatever, because it was probably very emotional for all the actors, but I noticed it too, and I'm glad you said it because poor little Moses was left out in the cold. I mean, literally, he's sitting right there. It wasn't as if Eric Braeden was given the speech and they had already moved the little child out of the scene and he, didn't see him, out of sight, out of mind. I mean, you could see that at the time Braeden was given that part of his speech, Moses was sitting right there in the same scene, in the same frame. So he just got forgotten. And Joanne left a comment saying, I happen to have the closed captioning engaged during Victor's tribute, and the closed captioning read out Charlie and Maddie and Moses. Victor left out Moses when he spoke. Oops. Talk about Nancy Drewing. We really teamed up to get the dirt on that, didn't we? Yes. Well, I mean, give him a break. I'm gonna give him a break, but yeah, I gotcha. Superplex says, I thought it was interesting that Victor in his eulogy described Neil Winters as a man's man. It turns out that Eric Braeden said the same thing about Kristoff St. John in one of the first interviews he gave following Mr. St. John's death. Did he add that description extemporaneously as he was delivering his dialogue, or was this an example of Eric Braeden insisting it should be included in the script? Well, I think I can give a little bit of background on that too. I listened to an audio interview with Kristoff St. John years and years and years ago, where he described Eric Braeden as a man's man. And that stuck with me too, because Eric Braeden is a man's man. But I mean, years ago, Kristoff saying that about Eric Braeden, and then Eric Braeden saying that in the eulogy, that had to be a little thing between them. There's no way that was an accident. Absolutely, Eric Braeden added that to the script. I'm sure it's much the same way that Shamar Moore did. They were given a base framework of what they needed to work with, but feel free to keep it loose. Feel free to add in a personal anecdote, and I think he did. Miami Tammy says, I was waiting for Nikki to say something. She and Neil went through a lot together over the years. Not enough time on the show to get her comments in? Totally, Miami Tammy. Let's think of the same thing. I mean, everybody got a chance to say something during the eulogies, and Nikki just sat there crying. I mean, they focused on her. She got a lot of camera time, but I would have thought that she would have had a chance to speak. I mean, Neil and Jack were close, but Nikki was close to Neil too. So yeah. I felt you there. I felt you. I noticed it too. Also, Miami Tammy says, I appreciate the writers not including the newer Genoa City residents in the morning. The Rosales family, Jet, Elena, even Kyle and Summer, who didn't interact with Neil. This felt a lot more intimate. Just the family. Old school Y&R. Yeah, I wouldn't have wanted everyone to be there. I mean, a funeral service, yeah, I like it should be more intimate. It should be the people that knew him and interacted with him. But I did note that Jet and Elena were not there. I don't know if it was like, oh, we don't want to be inappropriate because they're the newer characters, and I don't know. Why weren't Jet and Elena there? I could kind of have seen that. But I guess since they never shared a scene with him, maybe that was the test. If you shared a scene with him, all right, but if not, nope. Also, I'm kind of wondering if having some big old set where a bunch of people came in, if that would have been a problem for set space. And I'm thinking back on it now, and I'm wondering if the reason why we noticed last week that we lost a bunch of our front doors and it seemed like some of the sets had been collapsed, I wonder if that is because they needed to make room for that church set. I don't think we've ever seen that particular church before. So that almost seems like something they built for this, and I wonder if that meant they had to make space elsewhere. Nancy Drew? I don't know. Jana asks, was this filmed before Doug Davidson returned? I can't imagine why Paul wasn't there. Good question, Jana. I don't know, but even if it was before he returned, I'm surprised he wouldn't insist on being there. That I didn't look into. Can anybody answer that question? Why wasn't Doug Davidson at Neil's service? Please do tell. Leave a comment. Consuela says, Y&R needs a way where the fans can download Tessa's songs, because that last song she was singing on that episode was beautiful. I know. I thought Tessa's song was really good too, and I actually did have it in my head for the rest of the day and into the next. No kidding. It was catchy. I think we've heard it before, but that song was beautiful, beautiful. Tawny says the song is on YouTube. It's under Kate Fairbanks, and it's titled "The Woman That I Love." Oh yeah, I should check that out. It was good, but I like Consuela's point that it would be nice if maybe we could download the songs or that they were available for sale. That'd be interesting. Maybe do a little proceeds to a charity in Kristoff's name or something. That would have been a cool effect, but they did a lot. They did do a lot, and there's more to come. Jamie says, I think we all need a big hug after this week. I will need to pack the Kleenexes for Monday's episode, the memorial to Kristoff St. John. Yes, we've got more coming. We certainly do have more coming. We've been through it, and we're going to go through it for one more day. But I'm looking forward to Monday's episode. I think that is going to be maybe a little bit more uplifting. I hope we're celebrating Kristoff's life in the way that Friday's episode was celebrating Neil's life. And then we're going to go on, I assume. Tuesday through Friday, they're going to pick up kind of where they left off with the storylines that were in progress at the time that they needed to air Neil's funeral. So it's gonna be weird to go on. It almost seems like weird to go back to the other stories, but I know we must, and I know we should. And at least we've been through this together, and at least we can continue to chat about it. Thank you everybody for all of your comments through the week. I really liked being able to check in and see what everyone was saying, and it did give me comfort, honestly, watching these really hard episodes, just knowing that you guys are there, you're going through the same thing, and feeling like you had a good place to talk about it. That means a lot to me. Okay, well, I think I'm gonna get going. This was not a real high energy Y&R chat, but it's taken a lot of energy out of all of us, I think. But we're going to be back next week, and we'll just see where we are, and we will carry on. Go to yrchat.com if you want to carry on between now and then. I love you all so very much, and I hope that we have a little bit more of a happy week next week. Rest in peace, Kristoff. Rest in peace, Neil. We love you. We miss you. You're always going to be with us. Absolutely. Okay. I love you. Bye.